The Earth has been overlooked in Orthodox astrology, perhaps due to our general egocentric tendency to look out from where we are when it comes to the stars and not always look back to where we arise from, something like this. But in esoteric astrology, it is of particular importance in its relationship to the field of service that our work externalizes into. It is a planet of the third ray of active intelligence, and so reveals much about intelligent action, the steps we must take. It is therefore clear to see why it rules Sagittarius esoterically once Sagittarius becomes the one-pointed disciple and treads the path steadily, consistently, and with one-pointed focus to get to the base of the mountain of initiation in Capricorn. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about our home planet, the Earth, in astrology, keep watching. Earth is always found 180 degrees from the Sun, which makes it nice and easy to pinpoint in a natal chart, even if your software doesn't include the specific glyph, which many softwares don't actually. Still speaking to how behind astrology is in terms of beginning to integrate and synthesize the consideration of Earth as a planetary body having a radiatory influence on us, especially as humans. So in the exoteric consideration, we think about the reality of what we spoke of with the consummation and the balancing of the polar opposite sign. So in the case of the Sun sign, we're seeing the Earth represent exoterically a steady flow on of where the goals, ambitions, and the natural point of radiance and ease of the personality, that being the Sun, is going to naturally flow onward. And we can see how that makes sense. Let's say if we took a chart like Stephen King, he's got a lot of third house placements, his Sun being in the third house, so then that puts the Earth in the ninth house. What was he? An author. He wrote lots of stories, novels, and short stories or novels are more often found in the third house as opposed to the ninth house, which is higher education but also publishing. But we can see that how there would be a natural relationship of a writer who writes many different stories encountering the field of publishing and having their works, their creative works, in this case the Sun in the third house, published through those ninth house sorts of activities. So yes, it does work from an exoteric point of view. From an esoteric point of view, however, it is going to show us that externalized field of service once again, but specifically the emphasis on service rather than, let's say, general practical daily activities. The field of service to humanity. So it maybe makes sense here to clarify the difference between the Moon and the Earth. How are they connected or similar? They both have to do with matter and substance, but the main difference is that the Moon speaks to, in a similar way as does the Sun, a kind of general mode of being. If the Moon is well integrated and well placed and synthesized nicely, it speaks to a general way of the mastery of matter and wisdom, and similar to the Sun, it's a natural or an included way of being that's just part of who we are and what we do and how we generally express. But the Earth, it's a third ray entity, okay, and speaks to the practical daily steps and activities. So it's going to speak more to those activities, not necessarily the obvious mode of being, the activities. So that's the simplest way to differentiate it, let's say, from the Sun and the Moon, compared with the third ray quality of the Earth in this case. The Sun and Moon also, we might consider those qualities as being part of our personal identity or identification versus just the way that we are walking in our day-to-day lives. It's something like the inner spirit, in this case psychologically, versus the outer garment that clothes that spirit. So something about the quality of identification can also be considered with this. So esoterically, the Earth rules Sagittarius, as mentioned in the intro, revealing as Sagittarius works out that problem of the karma manas or instinctual mind and the scattered arrows with the more let's say, the immature, optimistic, and inflated qualities of Jupiter at the exoteric level. Oh, over here. Connects to the intuition, drops the lower mind. Remember that Mercury is in detriment for this reason in Sagittarius. Drops the lower mind. Connects to the intuition via that Antahkarana thread found in Gemini, which we'll speak of shortly. And then upon receiving those impressions from the soul, from the fifth kingdom, fifth ray expresses through Sagittarius, I know what I'm meant to do. And then with that, the application of the steps needing to be taken to get to the goal in Capricorn once again. So we can see the relationship between that quality of the intuitive capacity in Sagittarius leading to intelligent activity with Earth as the esoteric rulership there. The intuition is found or accessed also through the Antahkarana, and the Antahkarana and the building of this rainbow bridge is associated with Gemini. The Earth is also the hierarchical ruler of Gemini. So it really speaks to, at the esoteric level, the intelligence that is revealed through this axis of Gemini Sagittarius. Gemini is the sign that once we start responding to it esoterically, the place where we start to build the bridge between the personality and the soul. Those are the two vertical brothers. Now with the waning of the brother matter or the personality, building the connection to the soul there. And then in accessing the intuition and building the relationship with the intuitive faculty in Sagittarius, that leading to knowing what we're here to do and how we need to apply our activity. It's a funny thing because exoterically, Gemini and Sagittarius can be an axis that's quite ungrounded or impractical. Yes, Sagittarians can get a lot of things done, but there may not be enough overall consistency or vision that is unified enough. They may have one goal or this goal, and they're all great, but there's not necessarily that cohesive orientation towards service or an intelligent synthesis of the qualities, attributes, talents of the personality to really, in a practical way, achieve a strong Capricornian goal. And then in Gemini, exoterically, we can have that scattered problem or this idea and that idea, and in the most lower expression of Gemini, that there is almost a complete unconsciousness leading to that two-facedness that we can sometimes see in the immature Gemini, where there is almost an inability to even know what one thinks consistently. It's just sort of scattering all over the place. So both of those qualities exoterically that we just looked at are quite ungrounded or impractical. But once again, it always shows when we talk about the evolution into the esoteric properties, the transformation and the alchemical process where it almost becomes its complete opposite, where the mutability and the changeability in the air and fire sign, which exoterically are away from Earth, they speak esoterically to the qualities of consciousness. And when we integrate the qualities of consciousness, responding, connecting to the soul, responding to the intuition and the creative impulses from the soul, then this begins to inform our activity as substance. It informs our personalities. It tells us how to direct our personalities. So we can see here how the Gemini-Sagittarius axis becomes esoterically a very important one to look at when we consider our activity, where we start to build the Antahkarana, how we build the Antahkarana, where we quieten down the lower concrete mind in Sagittarius and start responding to the intuition, where we start accessing the signals of the creative gifts from the soul in Sagittarius. So for that reason too, make sure to look at where Gemini and Sagittarius, this axis, falls in your chart, because this is going to be a long-term indicator of what will become those earthly daily activities, notwithstanding where the Earth is actually placed in your chart, of course, because that will be opposite the Sun, and that's going to really speak to the where and the how. But in terms of the process of getting there, if we're looking at the esoteric delineation of the Earth, as it becomes a servant to the soul, and so speaks to the way in which the goal and the purpose of the rising sign as the sole purpose is going to work its way into connecting to the personality and then expressing in the life. Of course, the placement of the earth sign in its opposition to the sun is going to necessarily be speaking to those qualities. The house quality is going to connect to the houses of Gemini and Sagittarius. Sagittarius more specifically in terms of the esoteric level, but there's a hint there at Gemini as well. So if we can come back to Gemini, the earth with Gemini is the hierarchical ruler. This speaking to the mastery of relationships at the best possible level. Gemini is the sign of all kinds of relationships. So for the very evolved Gemini qualities, we're seeing the ability to make a point of contact wherever they are. That adaptability of Gemini, we know that Gemini is the most mutable, subtle, and thus adaptable of the signs. And so when that is most maturely developed, it speaks to the way in which this sign, Gemini, is able to present itself appropriately in any circumstance. And we can see in its best possible application of this quality how that allows one to make connections, build bridges, and therefore bring together those relationships required to incarnate a goal, to make a vision practical. So the earth in its hierarchical rulership there of Gemini is speaking to the way in which the mastery of relationships makes one a mastery of all planetary relationships, a master of bringing people together in the right way and knowing how to build something as a result of that networking. And through that relatedness, merging the earth here with Venus, which esoterically rules Gemini, speaking to the fusion, the way in which the fusion and the connective quality is necessary for us as human beings to be able to incarnate a divine purpose in a way that is earthly and practical and made real in the living life. So the big takeaways from today's video in terms of applying it to your own chart: first, look at that earth position 180 degrees from the sun and consider how you may already be able to detect the ways of those outer world activities in relationship to the self-identification from the sun, talking from an exoteric point of view. So what is the natural state of being of the sun, and how do those qualities in the house position that the sun is in express also through the sign and the house position of the earth. But then consider it from the point of view of the rising sign and start to see how those relationships may come into play. Of course, when it comes to the sun, we're talking about the sun becoming subservient to the rising sign of possibility, the soul's purpose, and starting to make the connection between, if we're moving with the soul's purpose, if you can sense that in any way yet, how that would start to move, rising sign moving through the sun as the natural way of being, and then moving out into the real world. And remembering too that from the level of this idea of consummation with the polarities, that the two really are one. So wherever the sun is, it says a lot about the nature and the quality of this sun expression through the nature of the opposite sign anyway. And that could be in part due to the relationship with the earth and the sun, and what that means in terms of our physical manifested existence and stepping out into the reality of those practical daily steps and affairs. So it's really the difference exoterically versus esoterically between the obvious daily activities of the personality, but not necessarily serving a broader, unifying humanitarian purpose in terms of being motivated by love and being motivated by a deeper unifying principle. On the subject of the rise, fall, exaltation, we aren't actually given any indications from the Tibetan himself. Alan Oken posits Capricorn as a potential exaltation of the earth, and you can see the logic there, right, in terms of it being the esoteric rule of Sagittarius and speaking to the practical steps. So then the third ray quality of the earth being able to climb the rocky mountain and bring a bit more oomph in terms of the ability to incarnate and manifest the goal. I don't really have any comments on that yet. It's still too much of a point of infancy for me personally, so if I have any thoughts later down the track, I'll be sure to let you guys know. So I'll just throw that out there in terms of potential abstraction. Speaking of Capricorn, we have to consider too the relationship between the Earth and Saturn, because Saturn is the sacred ruler of the third ray. It necessarily demonstrates the relationship between the higher expression of the third ray in the case of Saturn in terms of karma, the understanding of cause and effect, responsibility, and its connection to Capricorn in terms of incarnating something, and hinting again at the building quality of the third ray and its connection to Earth through Capricorn, the ability to incarnate and build something, the concretization of the mind through substance itself, versus Earth in its connection almost a little bit more pranically in terms of the animal body and the instinctual nature, and speaking to the physicality of those practical steps, the application of the body. Of course, it's connected to Sagittarius. Sagittarius is hierarchically ruled by Mars, pinpointing the single pinpoint, there you go, necessary slip of the tongue there, but the single pointed focus of Sagittarius, and the way in which Sagittarius speaks to the fusion of the elemental forces, that is, all of those the animal components of the human being, the vital forces of the human being. So Mars, as the hierarchical ruler of Sagittarius, is that complete fusion and subservience and devotion of the personality itself, here being represented by Mars as the physical vitality itself, and therefore the personality towards that goal. So just making the link there with the Earth in terms of, this is how I'm literally pushing my body into those activities every day, and versus Saturn, which could be the same thing, but it's a little bit more to the quality of the mental component. It's more of the focusing of that creative work in a way that's a little bit more to the head centers, and that responding to the intuition of the higher mind, and the need to penetrate into mental substance a little bit more, and not just the physical component of getting those disciplining yourself to get whatever activities are done, whether it's having to do my taxes or organize my wardrobe or something like that, which could all be part of it too, by the way. So the third ray, the Earth, there's a lot more field of study and research to be done in comprehending the nature of Earth and its intelligence, particularly its relationship to the Sun and also the Moon, because as Philip Lindsay has noted, the Moon acts as a sort of satellite for the Earth. It's an interesting turn of phrase there. It's obviously related in the way in its connection to substance itself and the manipulation of matter. So there's much to be thought out here, but to start off with, coming back to Earth, 180 degrees from the Sun, looking at that axis there, considering the daily natural steps of which one appears in the outer life. Remember Stephen King example of writer, publishing, and known in a broader field for his written works. So there's much work to be done in terms of researching further the nature of the Earth in our charts. Certainly to start with though, coming back to Sun, 180 degrees opposite in relationship to the goals of the Sun versus the sole purpose coming from the rising sign. And remembering that the Earth's position will indicate that general field and points of contact, coming back to Gemini, Sagittarius, but Gemini in particular, that's the natural field of service that we find ourselves in. That's the Earth position. So this is the place where we're making the real life, daily material contacts with others, and bridging those gaps, making those connections there, and that networking quality that brings it back to Gemini. So I think that's all for now on the Earth. Hope you found this interesting, and if you have any thoughts or considerations in reflecting upon your own chart, we'd really like to hear about them. Leave me a comment below. I'll see you next time.